I know a lot of people confuse joy with happiness and then in turn look for joy in places which can only bring them happiness. Let's say if you were to ask a group of 50 people what their purpose in life is, or at least what they think their purpose in life is, I can assure you that 90%, if not more, will tell you that their life purpose is to fulfill happiness. And that seems like something we all long to achieve, right? But as I thought deeper into what happiness actually meant, I realized that it's almost seemingly impossible to achieve happiness. And why is that so? That's because happiness is an emotion which is largely dictated by external circumstances, like our career, our status, our financial position, all these things which society puts value on. Rather, I think what most of us actually long to fulfill is joy. So what is joy? Joy and happiness are used very interchangeably in today's society. When we are happy about something, we often say we are joyful. In fact, they have some similarities but are also very different at the same time. Joy, in other words, is this sense of eternal peace which defies all external circumstances. As compared to happiness, joy is much more sustainable and something which we can all work towards achieving, because joy is not dictated by external circumstances which we can't innately control. So joy is something which we can achieve, and is something I think we need to achieve because it is similar to contentment. And I think contentment is also something today's generation and today's society needs. So even though joy is a state of being and hence more achievable, why is it still so hard to find joy? Why is it that so many people still struggle to find peace and joy with themselves? And I'm going to break this down into two main reasons. Point A, people associate happiness with joy. They think joy and happiness are synonymous. So whenever they don't feel happy, they think that they are not joyful, that they're not a joyful person just because circumstances have let them down. They think that they are not joyful in life just because they are down or sad for a period of time. But like I said, you can still experience joy and be sad at the same time, because it's not so much of an emotion, it's more of a state of being. Whereas you can't be sad and happy at the same time for the most part, right? But you can be joyful and sad at the same time, if that makes sense. And I think not many people know that, so they think being joyful and feeling down are mutually exclusive, hence they can't go hand in hand. So when they feel sad, they think that they have not achieved joy, right? But perhaps you might just be feeling sad because of external circumstances. You are not innately depressed. Or point B, which is also a cause of point A, is that we look for joy in things which can only bring us happiness, temporal satisfaction. So what are those things? I briefly mentioned examples earlier. Cars, property, architecture, finances, all these things which tend to pique our dopamine system, things which bring us excitement. I think happiness is more similar to euphoria than joy, if anything, because euphoria is like this burst of excitement. So I think happiness, honestly, is almost synonymous with euphoria. So the reason why a lot of people fail to find joy is because they look for joy in these areas of life which can only bring them happiness. Logically, right, you can't expect to find joy, which is a long-lasting eternal state of being, in things which can only grant you temporary satisfaction. You can't expect that, right? And I'm not condemning you for having that misconception, because I know a lot of people confuse joy with happiness and then in turn look for joy in places which can only bring them happiness. And there are people in their late 40s, their 50s who keep on chasing their next career advancement, chasing finances, money and all these things. But ultimately at the end of the day, when they retire, they realize that they're not fully satisfied with life. They're not satisfied their deepest longings, and that is the mistake a lot of people make. And that's something I'm very worried about doing as well, because we buy into this idea that money can buy us happiness and make us happy for, you know, the rest of our lives, when in fact it's not really the case. Of course, money can buy things which make us happy, and then that happiness can translate to joy. And yeah, I think happiness and joy kind of go hand in hand. Happiness, I feel like, is a subset of joy. Happiness can bring you some sort of joy too. Having a nice house, having nice cars can fulfill some part of you, but it definitely won't fulfill your deepest voids, your deepest longings. It can only, satisfy you so much. That is why it's dangerous to depend on extrinsic rewards to satisfy us. And I heard this quote from a pastor the other day from a sermon I was watching, and I thought this is a really good definition of happiness. Happiness is a reaction to happenings. As humans, we basically react to external surroundings, to external circumstances. So when things are bad, we tend to feel sad, and then when we get what we want, we tend to feel happy. But joy is completely different. It's not really an emotion like I've been mentioning throughout this video. And I know this sounds kind of cliche, but I truly believe that if you cultivate these habits, which I'm going to be sharing, you'll find some sort of joy, some sort of fulfillment down the road. So what are the things that can bring you joy? I think some of those things include family, relationships, community, health, all these more intrinsic aspects of life which cannot be tangibly measured using money. They're things that money cannot buy. And I think the reason why they're not talked about as much as things which we typically associate with happiness is because those things are more intrinsic. The value is also more intrinsic. So not many people talk about the value that those aspects of life provide because they can't really be shared with other people, right? Whereas cars and houses, properties are more tangible items, hence we can better visualize their value, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is that although you can't see innately the value of community, let's say health or relationship, there are things which are necessary to fulfill you and allow you to find true joy. So I think it's very important we cultivate that, we start allocating or reallocating, should I say, time and energy from chasing after money into developing our relationships, building community. Because what I feel is that if we invest all our time in chasing extrinsic rewards, we get numb to those things. So the more we chase after those things, the more of them we need in order to fully fulfill us. I think millionaires don't get excited when they buy a new supercar. Of course, they feel some sort of happiness, some sort of excitement, but not the excitement they first experienced when they first bought their first supercar, let's say. So you become numb to all these experiences, and you get numb to a certain point where no matter how expensive a house is, no matter how expensive, your yacht is, you still can't find fulfillment. And that's a worry I have if we keep chasing extrinsic rewards. I struggle with this as well because society places so much value on all these fancy, luxurious goods and items. So we program ourselves to think that those are the things which can truly fulfill us. And that's a very dangerous mindset to have, in my opinion. Again, I'm not condemning indulging in things that make you happy every once in a while, but I'm saying that if you want to find true joy, you can't be expecting those items to provide you with lifetime satisfaction. It just isn't realistic. Once you grasp this concept that happiness is largely dictated by external circumstances and is a reaction to what happens around us, and joy is something which defies all circumstances, I promise you it'll be much easier for you to find joy and also realize that feeling down at times does not make you less joyful as a person, if that makes sense.